Number 10. Donna Troy and Terry Long. Donna Troy was known at this time as Wonder Woman's little sister. She is the hero known as Wonder Girl, who is spun as being an Amazon from Themyscira, like Wonder Woman, but a teenager. Terry and Donna's relationship ended up becoming so serious that the two got married, and he was such a constant when it came to the Titans as a supporting character that even Starfire, Donna's BFF, ended up developing a little crush on him, and he on her, to be honest. That was also pretty creepy. Donna and Terry ended up having a son together before Terry filed for divorce and a restraining order because Donna's superhero lifestyle was too dangerous for him. In the end, he and both his daughter from a previous marriage, oh yeah, he was married and divorced before he ended up with Donna, and he and Donna's son ended up dying in a car crash because, well, probably no one wants us to remember their weird and pretty awful relationship.
Number 9. Black Cat and Wolverine. Wolverine and Black Cat Claws was a 3-parter released in 2010. When Felicia Hardy first met with Wolverine, they were both kidnapped by Kraven the Hunter in order for him to, well, hunt them down on his beautiful tropical island. The ultimate game of manhunt, I'd say. Now, when the issue started, Black Cat and Wolverine weren't really a fan of each other naturally, but when you're running and fighting for your life, emotions will probably be a little tender, a little exposed. But hey, nothing brings two people closer like beating up bad guys to a pulp, or of course, long walks on the beach. Either one's fine. So while it turned out that Kraven was actually a robot the whole time, spoilers, the real villain all along was Arcade and his girlfriend, White Rabbit. Bunch of fun games they're putting on there. They were behind all of this, and in the third part of the story, the cover alone suggests that the pair got much, much closer than the beginning of the tale. Black Cat steals a helicopter, Wolverine almost gets eaten by a fish. It's pretty tense. Later on, Black Cat admits that Wolverine was growing on her, and then a few days later, on a date, Black Cat also reminds Wolverine that she too can smell pheromones. And then we'll leave the rest up to your imagination.
Number 8. Catwoman and Nightwing. Another one that I'm sure we'd rather forget. For those who aren't aware of this romance, it has definitely been shipped before by people, and the idea of Catwoman and Nightwing together has even made its way into the comics. Albeit it was mostly Selina doing the seducing here and Nightwing kinda just trying to make her stop, but definitely appearing at least a little tempted. I mean, this is Selina Kyle after all, who wouldn't be tempted, you know what I mean? Catwoman did some flirting and kissing with Nightwing while attempting to go after the same diamond that he was looking to protect. In the end, he figured out what she was really looking to do with their little dalliance, making sure that Nightwing decided to kiss and tell, thereby making Batman jealous. What? Selina, ew! This whole thing is pretty gross, and especially as like some sort of weird jealousy bait. Not even just because of Catwoman's motivation in this story, but because Nightwing is like a son to Batman. So that's like Catwoman making out with her own stepson.
Number 7. Supergirl and Comet. Of course I have to talk about the time Supergirl fell in love with her pet horse. Of course. Now before you react, hear me out. It's a sapient horse with magical powers who at one point was actually a centaur in ancient Greece. So, you know, it's not too bad. It's still kind of bad. It's still a little bad. But dare I say it, he was actually quite handsome, I have to admit. He first appeared in Adventure Comics 293, and he became Supergirl's beloved pet, and then in Action Comics issue 301, he became a human being. I wish my dog turned into a human. I'd be like, hey man, what's up with the Q-tips? Why are you eating Q-tips every day? Yuck, stop. So just how did this happen? Well, a comet, that was passing Earth, turned him into a human man appropriately named Bronco Bill. And if the name isn't selling you, he also became a rodeo star. I guess he has quite the experience in the field, literally speaking as well. Supergirl and rodeo star Bronco Bill fell in love and dated for some time until he, you know, turned back into an animal. At that point, they called it off. Look, I have so many questions, I'm just afraid to ask them.
Number 6. Tony Stark and Emma Frost. A lot of people have been confused about the potential future wedding that was made mention of in History of the Marvel Universe issue 6 between Tony Stark and Emma Frost. Or maybe you're not confused because maybe you didn't know about this, but this is a thing. This seems like one of the most random mashups to happen in comics, within the same universe at least. And yet some are speculating it could just be a marriage in name alone, and more about a strong business partnership cemented through marriage. However, did you know that Tony and Emma actually have a romantic history? You might have missed the brief mentioning of it, but back in the 2006 Civil War in issue number 3, it was alluded to that Tony and Emma have potentially been sleeping sleeping together on and off for years, when neither of them were otherwise attached. As weird as these two together sounds, I mean, it does kind of make sense. Both are powerful people with an appreciation for the finer things, and who are both masters when it comes to business dealings. So they might have more in common than you think. And if you're wondering, yes, Scott does know about it apparently.
Number 5. Lois and SUPERBABY. Okay, being turned into a baby can be fun, definitely. In issue 147 of Batman, Bruce Wayne became a baby for a little and Robin didn't, so it was a good time. It was fun. The dynamic was funny. Just a little Batman using balloons to gain height. It's great. But sometimes it can get a little weird. For example, in Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane issue 59, we see more of this babyverse come to life, and it's kind of serious and totally creepy. It starts out with SUPERBABY getting spanked, which is quite the intro. Well, in this comic, SUPERBABY is from an alternate reality, and Superman is still a thing. He's still his own unit. So Lois brings home the baby version, and SUPERBABY starts ripping photos apart, just being a pain in the ass. It's the 60s we're talking about, so Lois spanks him a lot. She's like rolling her wrist out in between. I mean, he's the baby of steel, so it's gotta hurt a little bit. Things get even more weird than all of this when you realize the story is just about Lana and Lois fighting over who gets to marry the older SUPERBABY. This is one I hope I forget, but now you have to live with it as well.
Number 4. Jimmy Olsen and Mrs. Giz Piddle-Sinners. Jimmy has really random, weird, and random luck with women. Sometimes he gets the most charming ladies, and other times the most troublesome ones. Remember that time Harley Quinn pretended to be a love columnist who was interested in him because she actually wanted to kill him? That happened. He's had all sorts of superpowered and alien girlfriends over the years, but one of the weirdest instances of romance for Jimmy happened in issue 100 of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, during an issue where we saw him married, or almost married, to Lucy Lane, Lois's sister. In fact, the wedding ended up not happening after all Jimmy's exes showed up, who still had a thing for Jimmy, including Miss Giz Piddle-Sinners from the 5th Dimension. We'll just call her Miss Giz for short. Thank you past Amanda that wrote this. She is a trickster imp who hails from the same home as Mr. Mixie. She loved Jimmy so much, she sabotaged his marriage to Lucy, making it so that every time the pair kissed, Superman would be transformed into a mole. I'm not kidding, this also really happened. Something Jimmy later referred to as the mole effect. Wow, that's great, Jimmy. Miss Giz's undying and mischievous love for Jimmy actually succeeded in breaking up Lucy and Jimmy. Jimmy never gets any love in the end.
Number 3. Killer Croc and ORCA. A fishy match made in heaven, that's for sure. I wouldn't want to double date with these two. I mean, the smell alone, I'll take the check. Let's get the hell out of here. In the Injustice Elseworld series, Killer Croc and ORCA are married. Now, they must have met on Plenty of Fish or something. Now, that sounds like a pretty serious romance as it is, but in Injustice Volume 2, Issue 42, things get to the next level. ORCA walks in, announces that she's pregnant, and the room goes silent. No one makes a peep. There's a dull in the air. And then Killer Croc just slowly stands up, looks around for a little, and then tells the gang that he should probably head out now. He's not too pumped at the moment, but we definitely were.
Number 2. Rogue and the Sentry. This is a weird one that just randomly was retconned into existence. But what do you expect with the Sentry, one of the original heroes who himself was retconned into existence? During Sentry's funeral in Sentry Fallen Sun, after the death of both him and his wife Lindy, we see all the heroes gather to pay their respects. They all share their feelings and memories of Bob over a few beers, and a water for Tony because, as Sentry taught him, he always has a choice. While reminiscing, Rogue reveals that Sentry was the only person who could touch her, though I'm pretty sure Magneto can kinda do that too, at least in some realities. Anyways, because Sentry was the only person who could touch her, they ended up having a deeply emotional and physical relationship. We don't really know what Lindy thought of this, or when exactly their relationship happened, or how that all works. This is all we get before Rogue runs off in tears, and I don't think it's ever really mentioned again, so that's kinda weird.
And number 1, Harley Quinn and Harley Quinn. Do you think if you met another version of yourself, you would like them? Would you fall in love? I had this conversation with my friend after watching Loki recently. I could date myself maybe for a week, and then I would go through my phone and be like, who's this guy? And I'm like, you tell me, bro. But when Harley Quinn met herself back in 2016's Harley's Little Black Book, she fell in love. It was great. From Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, we get to see 6 issues where Harley teams up with other big names. like Superman, Lobo, but then things get unique when Harley meets herself in one of these fun alternate universes, and it's great. They love each other, it's a ride. This whole issue was a good time, but it just honestly made me think if I could date myself. Amanda, could you date a clone of yourself?
I would date me. I would date a variant me. So either like male, female me, but like, you know, has to be a little different.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, what about you? So quick, he's like, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we're both like, yes, we would totally do it.
I would do it. The same clone, same height too. We could dance together. Oh, it'd be great. The curls, we get lost in each other's curls. It'd be beautiful.
Number 10, Morgan Le Fay. Oddly enough, these two in a way seem almost perfectly suited for one another. Of course, this only means that their relationship is made even more weird. Doom and Morgan Le Fay became lovers over time, forming a relationship during a time when Morgan Le Fay was training and teaching Doom in the arts of magic. Doom enjoyed their lessons and I assume also enjoyed spending time with Morgan, but when she asked him for a gift from the future to prove his loyalty and his love, Doom refused, giving Morgan the excuse that doing so would, you know, disrupt the timeline. Morgan didn't like this very much and set out traveling through time to the future in order to destroy Doom. Initially, she planned to kill Doom when he was young and vulnerable, but was not satisfied with the fact that Doom would kinda then not know the reason behind her wrath. In the end, her confrontation of Doom resulted in a battle with Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers, and while Morgan very much messed up that team, she was ultimately defeated by Doom during the fray. Not the most healthy of relationships. And it's strange that that's the least weird one. Just keep that in mind. That's number 10. That's the starting point. Number 9, Sue Storm. This one isn't that weird once we delve into what really prompts Doom to seek a relationship with women, but it is weird because of basically all of those reasons. Meaning it might not seem weird to Victor that he has a certain attraction to Sue, but it's definitely weird in general. Some have speculated that Doom simply wants to offer Sue Storm more, like Reed's other rival for Sue's affections, Namor the Submariner. But it's more likely that Doom only wants Sue because of the power that she represents, and because he knows how much it would destroy Reed Richards. Still, overall Doom has a pretty weird relationship and complex feelings it seems at times for both the Invisible Woman and the rest of the Fantastic Four family besides. Let's also just talk about how awkward it was when God Emperor Doom made Susan his wife when he created a new world out of the tattered pieces of the multiverse following the incursions, cause there's always that to go back to. And he also made her 2 kids his kids, even though they definitely still looked just like her kids with Reed. What's happening there? Number 8, Enchantress. I mean, it makes sense for Doom to be with magical ladies, but it's also pretty weird when you consider that Doom before has gone out of his way in the past to show how little he cares for Enchantress, and how little he feels any attraction to her, despite her being considered as one of the most beautiful beings in the world, the epitome of femininity. But you know Doom, he likes what he likes, and even then he probably won't treat who he likes great, and is likely just using them for some other gains. Still, Doom and Enchantress ended up getting married on the alternate Earth 9811, where everyone remained stranded on Battleworld, and even had a son together there. However, not even them having a son together or being wed could save Enchantress, as Doom still murdered her, and evaded his son's attempt to kill him using magic he had learned from his dead wife. Wow, that is all kinds of messed up. And before we move on to this next point, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it, and if you just want even more weird romance in your life. Who doesn't want more weird romance in their life, am I right? Storm. How bad is it that Storm isn't even one of the weirdest entries on this list? And her relationship, or date at least, with Doom was pretty weird. Date, kidnapping, it's kind of both. It all went down after Storm was kidnapped by Doom and held prisoner, but treated as a guest. He wined and dined Storm, and she was even beginning to think she might be attracted to him. But then he made a terrible move and he messed it all up by encasing her in chrome. Don't do that on a date, that's a bad move. This set off Storm's intense claustrophobia, which she had ever since she was little and found herself trapped under wreckage. Storm reacts by creating a massive storm, one that's implied has the potential, or already has, overtaken the entire planet, putting her on a level of power that is compared to the Phoenix. Doom might think he's a brilliant charmer who can do as he pleases, but he should probably think twice before he messes with Storm. Number 6, Storm, again! I know, you're like, wait, didn't we just talk about this? But no, this is different. This one happened in an alternate reality in the Marvel book X-Men/Doctor Doom and the Chaos Engine trilogy, or sometimes referred to as the Cosmic Cube trilogy, on the alternate Earth of 892. 2. Dr. Doom here makes Storm his wife and his co-ruler. She becomes the Empress, whether or not she wants that. They have 2 children together, and we also learn of how intensely creepily protective Doom is of his bride when a guard accidentally witnesses Storm changing, and as punishment, Doom has his eyes gouged out. The strangest thing about this one for me is the first book in the Chaos Engine series came out in 2000, whereas Storm was encased in chrome during her weird kidnapping date thing with Doom in 1981 in issue 145 of X-Men, implying to me that Stephen A. Roman, who wrote the Chaos Engine trilogy, may have actually been inspired by that strange dinner date to have Doom forcefully marry Storm in this book. Number 5. Scarlet Witch. This was a weird romance that involved Scarlet Witch kind of forgetting who she really was in order to fall for Victor. The two fell in love fast, though under false pretenses. And although at first we thought Dr. Doom was just trying to manipulate Wanda, he later insisted this was not the case and that he really loved her. And just as we thought maybe this could actually work out in some weird way, Doom then lashed out, seemingly implying he never loved Wanda, and in fact he thought she was weak and he had been using and manipulating her the whole time. Although it's more likely that Doom was actually just lashing out because he felt some shame, maybe he had a broken heart. He mistreated Wanda harshly, even when she still tried to help him despite his betrayal, and insisting that she was weak and that he had only been using her weakness against her to get her power. Needless to say, that was pretty much the end of their relationship. That great revelation, and the bizarre revelation where Doom claimed that apparently every bad thing Wanda has ever done was actually not of her own doing, but was caused by Doom himself. Wait, what? Number 4. Shalla-Bal. Okay, I couldn't put this one in the top spot because it wasn't real. Just one of Doom's many ploys to trick others into helping him in a plot to destroy his arch nemesis, the team known as the Fantastic Four. Here, Dr. Doom pretended to marry Shalla-Bal and pretended that he had wiped her memories of the Silver Surfer, when the Surfer ultimately found out after crash landing in Latveria and seeing posters celebrating the reign of their new queen, Doom's new bride, who in reality was not the real Shalla-Bal, but an imposter created to resemble Silver Surfer's aka Norrin Radd's long lost love. There are so many questions I have in regards to how Dr. Doom was able to pull this plan off, but hey, it's a comic and it's Dr. Doom, so I'm just willing to let any queries go unanswered here and just accept that this worked. Even with this not being the real deal Shalla-Bal, the fact that Dr. Doom created this whole ploy and relationship just to destroy the Fantastic Four is pretty bizarre and intense, and it's also part of the reason why I think so many of us fans love him. Number 3. AMARA PERERA. AMARA PERERA was a brilliant doctor who ended up discovering a cure for the mutant gene, but one that she dared not produce, knowing what kind of unrest and political and sociological warfare it would likely create. She dated Tony Stark briefly before he faked his own death. When he returned, she was no longer interested, feeling he had betrayed her by letting her think he was dead when he was not, which I mean, fair enough. She then ended up becoming a reluctant ally, confidant, friend, and implied lover to Dr. Doom during the events of the infamous Iron Man series, where Victor Von Doom took up the mantle of Iron Man during Tony's absence. At the end of that series, it was revealed that AMARA was pregnant, although it was later briefly mentioned by Dr. Doom that their unborn child did not make it to term and thus was never born. I love when other writers do that. They just come in and they're like, this never happened, it's fine. Don't worry about it. While this relationship actually felt pretty authentic, it was definitely still odd and random. But it also happened at a pretty strange and unique time in Victor's life, so yeah, I guess okay. Number 2. Sandy Bidwell. Who is Sandy Bidwell? Well, she is a woman that Doom very well severely messed up when he was in college. Doom tells us about what happened with Sandy, although he himself doesn't recall her name, in Ed Brubaker's Books of Doom. He remembers being inebriated and an attractive woman coming on to him as he bragged about Latveria and his promising future while on campus. She kissed him, pushing him up against a tree, but when he looked into her eyes, he didn't like the emptiness that he saw in them, which ignited something in him, a fury and anger, and he started to strangle her, attacking Sandy. We later find out that she tried to report Victor, but his military connections handled it, working with the school administration and the government to cover it up, hide it, and force Sandy out of school, paying off her family. Of course, Victor didn't know any of this, but still, what was that? That was terrible. Number 1. Valeria. This was a pretty sweet romance initially. Valeria was Doom's first love and they both really did love one another. But in the end, Doom's ambition got in the way of their romance. Years later, Doom actually tracked Valeria down, confessing how much he still loved her and how much she meant to him, before we realized what he was really doing. Valeria meant so much to him that she made a fitting price for what Doom really wanted: some sweet, sweet enchanted armor. Comic readers watched on in horror as Valeria was transformed into Doom's armor, her skin peeling away, her soul doomed, but at least she'd always be by his side. Jeez, remind me to never fall in love with Dr. Doom. Number 10. Flash Thompson and Valkyrie. This was a relationship that happened during the Secret Avengers when Flash Thompson as Agent Venom was on the team. I know I said I'd be focusing on Eddie Brock and Venom relationships, but this one also technically involves Venom through Flash and is too weird for me to just not include. Also, Flash was Agent Venom for quite a while in the comics, so I feel like we can just definitely count him in. This relationship was more strange because it was just so out of the blue. I don't have anything against it, but even Valkyrie Brunhilde acknowledged the awkwardness and decided to take matters into her own hands by basically jumping Flash Thompson's bones. It was a strange, secret relationship, but I guess what do you expect on the Secret Avengers? Seems oddly fitting, if not a bit abrupt. Alright friends, before we move on to that next point, it's that part of the video where I do the YouTube thing and I say, hey, click this like cause it helps us. But seriously, click this like cause it helps us. Number 9. Venom and Clint Barton. Things get pretty weirdly kinky with these two characters in the New Avengers Annual issue number 3 from 2009. Here we see what happens to Clint after he goes after Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. He is being held as a prisoner and is being interrogated. I don't know if we'd call this so much a romance as a weird, sexy monster moment, but it's definitely notable enough to receive a mention. Here Venom is bonded with Matt Gargan, Hawkeye is naked, and Venom is seen licking him from behind and very loosely and suggestively choking him, while Norman asks him where the other true Avengers are hiding out. It's all very sensual in a way that is odd and to me definitely implies Venom or Mac or some combination basically consider Hawkeye to be a hottie. That's how it's made to look anyways. I can't blame them though, I feel like Clint Barton is definitely a hottie, so yeah. Number 8. Venom and Mary Jane. Another strange romance for sure. Venom basically left MJ traumatized when the two first met, to the point that she was terrified of them and has had various disturbing experiences with them throughout her history. And yet, this is comics and histories are long, so pretty much anyone can end up with anyone. Also, this is MJ and I feel like everyone just wants to ship her with everyone because, I mean, MJ's a hottie, so yeah. These two haven't gotten romantic in the traditional sense, but there have been a few moments where Venom has seemingly pined for Mary Jane, resenting the fact that Eddie always seems to get the girl, despite the fact that he is usually the one messing up those relationships. Which is very strange, especially considering how much Venom seems to pine for Eddie, but anyways. Once again, Venom is definitely a jealous creature by nature, which we've seen time and time again in the comics. We have also seen the symbiote bond with Mary Jane, much to her own chagrin, and despite the likely conflicted feelings of MJ fans at this happening. But yeah, it's a weird and problematic thing, and it's there. So let's just acknowledge it. Number 7. Eddie Brock and Liz Allen. A romance that never really amounted to anything other than Eddie trying to make a move on Liz, who pretty much just always rejects him. This attempt at a romance was made even weirder too when Venom revealed their jealousy of Liz, although I get it, they want Eddie all to themselves. Why bother with Liz when Eddie has a perfectly good romantic partner in Venom? The whole thing is pretty weird though, Venom feeling the need to compete with Liz for Eddie's attention, when really, who has more of Eddie's time than Venom themselves? They basically have a monopoly on it. They spend most of their time bonded to the guy, but the whole exchange here is made even more strange by the fact that Liz doesn't really reciprocate Eddie's romantic interest to begin with. So there isn't that much even for Venom to be jealous of, other than I guess Eddie's wandering eye. Venom's like, Eddie, I see your eyes wandering and just look at me. Just look at your symbiote. Look at yourself in the mirror, basically. Number 6. Venom and Spider-Man. One of the greatest unrequited love stories of all time. Poor Venom just wanted to bond with Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was having none of it. This was truly a rough time for the symbiote, who just was getting rejected left, right, and center until he fell into the lap of Eddie Brock, who seemed to also share his hatred for Spider-Man, and the two basically encouraged a sense of hate and kinda rage in one another initially because of this negative experience that Venom had originally with Peter Parker. If you don't believe me that this was a romance of sorts, just look at the name of the issue where the two kind of break up more permanently in Web of Spider-Man. The name of the story where the suit attempts to once more bond Peter unsuccessfully, who shakes it off with the sonic disruptance of some loud bells ringing, is called Till Death Do Us Part. Sounds pretty romantic to me. Definitely some strange, sad, and unrequited love there. Poor Venom, they're always being rejected by Spider-Man, continuously. Number 5. Venom and Lee Price. Lee Price really messed up Venom. Their relationship was weird in the worst of ways. Venom bonded to Lee when it was desperate for a host, but Lee ended up taking control of the symbiote and using it to do all kinds of terrible things and kill people. Not that the symbiote hadn't killed people before, I mean it had, but the huge difference here was this was very much against Venom's will, and Price would often use it to target people regardless of their alignment, which Venom has always been conflicted about, while with Eddie it was against hurting innocents for the most part. But Lee didn't care about what Venom wanted or its feelings. Basically, this relationship between Price and Venom, while not inherently romantic explicitly, was meant to symbolize the most toxic kind of romantic relationship. An abusive one. Number 4. Venom and Beck Underwood. This one was pretty weird because Beck seemed to be super into it at first. Well, I mean for a time anyways. Like most people, she ended up ultimately being turned off by the whole combo deal of Venom and Eddie Brock together. In the end, the whole dating of both the symbiote and Eddie ended up just being too much for her. It got pretty strange too when Beck asked Eddie about his relationship with the suit and wanted to make sure it was healthy. One of the things that I actually didn't really like about her was how she got kind of a bit judgy when she felt the need to seek clarity on if Eddie was really enamored with Venom because he just hadn't found an adequate and committed woman to settle down with. Let Eddie love his alien suit, I say. Just let it happen. But I totally understand that it can be a lot for someone to get involved with both Eddie Brock and, you know, the alien that is Venom. That's a lot. In the end, the two ended up parting on amicable terms, with Beck giving both Eddie and Venom one last kiss and hug. And Venom was also super heartbroken about it. They were like, no, please don't leave us. Number 3. Eddie Brock and Ashley KAFKA. This one comes to us not from the comics, but instead from the Spider-Man animated series out of the 90s. Here, Dr. Ashley KAFKA was the person treating Eddie Brock during his time at Ravencroft Institute for the criminally insane. Eddie insisted that he was Venom, but Dr. KAFKA believed that he was just delusional and that stress had basically caused him to lash out and to believe that he was the villain Venom, when he actually wasn't. This relationship was weird on the premise that it was a patient and doctor relationship turned romance, and the fact that both fell in love with one another while Ashley kinda thought Eddie was imagining being Venom and was at the time insane. So yeah. It got even weirder when Carnage got involved and caused a bunch of chaos that caused Eddie to save the day once reunited with the Venom symbiote. In the end, they were unable to be together as Venom got sucked into a magical portal in order to save Ashley. Don't you just hate it when a magical portal and multiple villains prevent you from being with the one you love? I know I do. Number 2. Eddie Brock and Anne Wang. And Venom? This relationship basically got super weird in a bad way for Anne when Venom got involved. Anne and Eddie were originally married, but after Eddie lost his dad and his job, Anne couldn't take sort of the dark path that he was headed down and left him. This of course only put Eddie in an even darker place, and then he found the Venom symbiote. Together, their combined hatred for Spider-Man turned them into a villain, but Eddie still longed for Anne and wanted to make things right. They kind of ended up back together for a bit, but this also made things worse for Anne, who was left traumatized and feeling violated after bonding with Venom herself. She didn't like the person that she and the symbiote were together, she Venom, nor what it did to Eddie. And it was all this trauma that actually caused Anne to be unable to leave her apartment for months, and later resulted in her taking her own life after Eddie and Venom confronted her once more and were super clueless when it came to just how fragile Anne's emotional and mental state was at the time. Because Spider-Man was also present at the time and also freaking Anne out though, Eddie of course continued to blame him for his problems and for the death of his ex-wife. Number 1. Sim Brock. This is really the love story for the ages, but is also one of the strangest ones out there. Eddie falling in love with a symbiotic alien suit who it turns out is its own living entity, and vice versa. This is confirmed in the comics as the two have expressed their love for one another and even at times bickered like a married couple. They also call each other things like love and dear, so yeah, that's pretty coupley in my opinion. Not only that, but Eddie has helped Venom deliver children, even though those children are technically kinda just Venom's who reproduces asexually. But still, Venom considered Eddie to basically be the father of their children, so yeah. And also, Eddie helped the symbiote to deliver, in essence, their symbiote child together, Sleeper, bonding with Venom while it was in essence giving birth. This labor was a hard one, and Eddie bonded with Venom to help it through and to help stabilize his partner, not just in this labor, but also in heroics, crime, and in a way, love. Aside from this moment, we have seen tons of other moments where the pair chose to be together and support one another in a pretty intimate way. At the end of the day, these two together are one of the weirdest and sweetest romances on this list. So many sweet and terribly weird romances here. Just really weird romances of all kinds with Venom, Venom hosts, Venoms, you know what I mean. What is your favorite Venom relationship? Are there any that you think are just not weird at all? Let us know in the comments below. I feel like it's hard to actually date a symbiote and it not be weird at all. It's gonna be weird to an extent, I think.